So for our viewers at home, tell us a little bit about the format of your podcast and the guests you're interviewing.
Sure. So we just launched season 3 of Journeys of Faith. And what I really wanted to do was talk to newsmakers and influencers about their personal faith and how it guides them through the ups and downs of life. So again, we're on season 3. In past seasons, we've talked to Ben Shapiro, Kellyanne Conway, Tim Tebow, Sam Harris, who's an atheist. We've talked to Muslims. We've talked to Sikhs. We've talked to people of Jewish faith, people of Christian faith, because I think it's important to have these conversations that we all show up as our true selves. We start learning about one another's cultures and traditions, and I think then we can start to break down some of those barriers. But we just launched season 3, and we wanted to focus in this political climate. Of course, we're all talking about the election coming up at the end of the year, but to talk to politicians, some of the candidates, the 2020 candidates, and other influential politicians about how their faith really dictates their person and their policies. So it's a chance to get some of these candidates and these politicians, off of the stump. Don't give us your stump speech. I want to hear more about your personal faith journey and hear how it's influencing your policies.
And Paula, what role do you see faith playing in 2020?
Oh, I think faith is playing a huge role. And for so long, I think the conservative community and the Republicans really had a hold on I would say more the evangelicals. But you see Democrats starting to talk about faith because so much more because they know how important it is to a large swath of the country. And, you see Senator Cory Booker, who has called out his fellow Democrats for not talking about faith as much as they should. And he says they're scared to not be seen as a big tent party. But you see more and more the Pete Buttigieg's of the world, the mayor from South Bend, Indiana, talking about his faith and how personal it is. And almost every candidate that's out there right now, they're bringing up their faith in some form or fashion because they know that it is so important, not just to the heart of the country, middle America. It is so important to so many of us. That's the reason that I really launched the podcast, is I can't separate myself from my faith. It's so important to me, and I know it's so important to so many people. And I wanted as a mainstream outlet to give these newsmakers and influencers a platform to talk about what they believe and why. And again, I said it's for people of many different faiths.
Let's talk about how this podcast did come to be. Leading up to it, I know you've said it was a year from hell. Can you talk about that?
Mm-hmm. Well, at the time, I was anchoring Good Morning America weekends. I was doing The View. I was working long stretches at a time, sometimes 21 days without a day off. And frankly, Jenna, I just burnt out. And I was leaning into the wrong things. And, we buy that lie that our calling is our career, right? And so I was leaning in so hard, and I got to a point where I just started losing sight of everything and everyone around me. And I was frankly addicted to my job. And I went through a tough season where I knew God was trying to get my attention to slow down and to pump the brakes, but I didn't want to, because I'm at the height of my career, right? I don't stop now. I don't slow down now. I just keep charging forward. And so I allowed that fear to prevent me from doing what I knew God wanted me to do, which was slow down and get my priorities straight. So I ended up going through this, what I call a season of hell. It was 7 months, and it started with there were 5 major events. It started with a miscarriage that led to an emergency surgery, and then led to the next thing that happened was a concussion. Somebody threw an object at my head when I was doing a live shot. It knocked me out of work for 3 weeks. And then the day that I got cleared to go back to work, Jenna, I get in a head-on car crash, and then I get influenza, and it turns into pneumonia. One of my colleagues here said, "Oh my gosh, you're Job." It did feel like that. I felt like God really had to get my attention to get me to slow down. And so I went to my bosses here at ABC, and I just said, "Guys, I need to slow down. I need to walk away from The View. I need to step away from Good Morning America weekend edition anchoring." And that was hard because it's everything that I'd worked for so long, but I knew I needed to slow down or my addiction, my job was going to get the best of me. But in that space, I said I need a more manageable schedule. I'd like to work Monday through Friday, and I'd really like to launch a faith podcast to give to give newsmakers and influencers a platform, a mainstream media platform, to talk about their faith, regardless of what that faith may be, so that hopefully we can start having really important conversations about who we really are and talking about one another's beautiful traditions, whether they're Muslim traditions or Jewish traditions or Christian traditions, so we can start breaking down some of those barriers and some of those walls. But just an opportunity to have some really provocative conversations.
Yeah, and it is a great podcast. I think a lot of our viewers will really enjoy it. Once again, it's Journeys of Faith with Paula Faris. And Paula, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Jenna. God bless. Thanks for having me.